Welcome back. The Judicial Tribunal into allegations of sexual harassment against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge will resume on Monday. The inquiry today heard from Mbenenge's subordinates who were cross-examined on the alleged accusations. Newzroom Afrika's Qaanitah attended today's proceedings in Sandton and joins us now live. Qaanitah, very good afternoon to you. Quite an eventful day, I believe, in those settings. The High Court Secretary started off with her testimony, followed by the Director of Court Operations. And maybe let's just start off with Ms. Jobela's testimony in terms of what were the highlights of some of what came out in her testimony.
Well, she was called to the inquiry to give evidence because she was one of two people who Andiswa Mengo forwarded messages and images allegedly from Judge Selby Mbenenge. Now, you remember yesterday she told the inquiry that she didn't know the name of the judge. All Ms. Mengo told her that an elderly man who was a judge, old enough to be her father, was sending her unwanted images and forwarded her 3 images. She, however, was under cross-examination today, but could not give the date in which she received those pictures from Ms. Mengo. The other person who obviously received those images is someone who Ms. Mengo referred to as is now late, so that person can't testify. So the other person who knew or could corroborate Mengo's versions is Ms. Jobela, who's a High Court Secretary, a colleague of Andiswa Mengo. She told the inquiry that she received 3 images and that she could not recall the date, the day, the month, or the year. And that is something the inquiry chair, Judge Bernard Ngope, took exception to say, I can understand if you don't know the exact date. Or the day, or the month, but surely you need to know the year. And she says she can't because if she, gives a time, she may be wrong.
Also, the Director of Court Operations gave quite a number of information with regards to his testimony. He spoke about a portrait that hung outside Ms. Mengo's office and that traumatized her and she had put it down. But when she came back from testifying from the tribunal in January, that portrait was put back up and it was locked in.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of detail that's coming out, particularly because he's important, because he was one of the first people that she went to to sort of say to have this complaint. And obviously at the center of her testimony was that there was initially an effort to have a round table, to have, herself, the Director of Court Operations and Judge Mbenenge at a round table to discuss the matter. This was before she publicly posted WhatsApp screenshots of their communication, which we heard from the inquiry caused the judge some distress. And then after that, she was advised to say, go to Midrand, go to the headquarters of the Office of the Chief Justice to lay a complaint, which is what she ended up doing. And so there was no roundtable that was eventually happened between the 3 of them. And then eventually this matter was handed over to what they call Midrand, which is the head offices of the Office of the Chief Justice. And we heard earlier in the week from the person who obviously took down the complaint and the process that was followed. So at the center of the defense case is that there were some sort of unprocedural processes in relation to how Ms. Mengo actually laid the complaint against this Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. So it's important because the defense obviously denying the accusations, saying that it was not sexual harassment, it was in fact communication and interactions between 2 consenting adults. And also what the evidence lead advocate Salome Skierpers was trying to put forward to the inquiry in this last few days is that Ms. Mengo obviously, has corroboration through WhatsApp messages, which they then presented and brought forward an emoji expert to say that the nature of the interaction was sexual. And then now speaking to people who Mengo sort of interacted with when she opened the case or when this incident allegedly happened, to say that obviously there were more than one person that knew about it and people within the court environment in the Eastern Cape were aware of it.
So back to that round table, I mean, Qaanitah, who was giving testimony, is the one who was facilitating this round table between Mengo and Mbenenge.
Which didn't happen.
Which didn't happen. And she had insisted that some female judges sit within that round table, and he had said, no, it only should be between the three of them. Did she release the WhatsApp status
a few days after that?
Yes.
And so that changed the dynamic, and that's when the director of court operations, the Eastern Cape, told the inquiry that that's when he then advised her to go and lay a formal complaint. And so that's when the matter almost got out into the public domain. And some of the staffers at the court who testified in the inquiry this week said that's when they found out about it, when they've seen this WhatsApp exchanges that were released by Ms. Mengo at the time. She then travelled to Midrand and opened the case, and then obviously what ensued was this inquiry that began earlier this year. Now, we must remember that the inquiry is trying to prove sexual misconduct. And if it is successful, if the evidence leader is successful in making that case, then it opens the door to impeachment. And then remember, the significant nature of this inquiry as well is that we've never had a judge facing a probe of this nature. So it's the first of its kind. It's almost a precedent-setting in many ways. And obviously, this is a senior member of the bench, and he is trying everything in his power to clear his name.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, it's going to be how the chair and the two other members of the panel have to come to a conclusion that says, is Ms. Mengo's version correct, that it was unwanted sexual advances and an abuse of power from a prominent, high-profile judge, or was it, according to his version, naughty talk between two consenting adults?
So proceedings resume on Monday. Do we know what is going to come next? Who's taking giving testimony from that point onwards?
So the evidence leader will conclude calling their witnesses, and that's when it comes now to the defense to present their list of witnesses that they have already indicated that they will bring their own expert to testify around the nature of the WhatsApps. They will also, speak to or bring witnesses to corroborate Mbenenge's version. It will be interesting to see whether they actually call him to the stand or not. We know earlier in the year, in February, Ms. Mengo gave evidence for almost close to 2 weeks.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see if they call him to the stand, and if they do, what does he actually say in that regard? And so that will obviously be up to the defense whether they opt to call him or not. And so a full week again next week, as there's added pressure on this inquiry to wrap up and come to some conclusion for the finality of this case.
Right. Qaanitah Hunter, thank you so much for joining us. Certainly, like you say, a case where unprecedented, if it would come to a time where such a judge would be impeached for sexual harassment. But thank you so much for bringing us that update.